Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a product manager for the managed stage here at GitLab. And our CEO, Sid, recently posted a quick video on compliance here at GitLab that I wanted to quickly respond to. So I agree that 100% that GitLab has a big opportunity to help organizations kind of stay compliant. The fact that we're a single application gives us a big advantage here versus competitors because we have this broad scope of capabilities at GitLab that allow us to do things that others can't. And our vision is really for out-of-the-box compliance that doesn't require all these complicated separate systems or for you to roll your own audit management or compliance tools. We think this is, a common pain point from large enterprises that causes them to endure and absorb a lot of expense and complicated processes. And I think we can help a lot here. So I'm not a compliance expert, so please take my perspective with a small grain of salt. But I personally think about compliance and with a two-part framework. And one is kind of what we've been talking about, which is maintaining standards over code. And there's also another part, which is maintaining standards over the processes that go and create it. So for the first, I agree that we should be able to check per environment whether all the changes that are kind of meeting my own policies. One point I think is that we should make it so that these are able to be defined out of the box by regulatory frameworks like SOC 2 and others, or maybe not, that maybe we want to enforce our own security practices over deploys that are kind of independent from a particular out of the box framework. I also think that what we should do is not initially enforce or require adherence to rules like code quality or security scanning because organizations might be different in how they interpret rules. We should make it really easy to have a really great user experience around finding these exceptions, which are these commits that maybe weren't security scanned, and allow people to run the security scan really easily before it goes to production with a great user experience. But it also allows you to handle and ignore these exceptions if you decide that's a step that you want to take. And the way that GitLab interprets the regulatory compliance doesn't meet the needs of your organization. I think what we want to do is we don't want to force ways of working on enterprises that have their own framework for success set up. But for those organizations going through digital transformation, we want to make it really easy out of the box with templated kind of examples and frameworks in place that you can apply to different environments that make it really easy for you to stay compliant. So for the second part, I think, which is kind of maintaining standards over the processes of creating code, I think organizations need to do more than just ensure that code hitting production meets a certain standard. They need the confidence and make sure that it meets the standards for how it should be created and reviewed. And a good example of this is separation of duties in SOC 2, which is generally followed as the person that merges code to master can also be the person who's deploying it to production. So we really need tools to establish these rules of kind of policies and workflow in GitLab. We're working on the first part now, which is we're calling it policies at the moment, which we at the moment we see as custom sets of rules that you can determine what a user can and can't do for projects and groups. So for a group that's managing a critical revenue generating application, that's going to have a different set of rules than a project or a group that's used for inner sourcing, for instance. So I should be able to define what people should and should not be able to do in a custom policy and apply that on a project by project basis, where I can determine to say I need strong separation of duties, kind of like this on this particular project, and be able to enforce that and know that that's how the project is being run. I think that we shouldn't stop there at just the policies level. We need to be able to set policies from templates based on these common compliance needs. So like I mentioned, if you're not already an enterprise that has strong processes in place of how you'd like to comply with frameworks, we should be able to easily do that for you and roll up this activity in a single view so that you have confidence that all your code is being created in a way that meets your compliance needs. Because the next question that organizations want to ask is, okay, great, I've defined these policies at the project level. How can I guarantee and show that off to an auditor that all of this is being handled and created in a way that makes sense? And I think that lastly, the last point I want to make is that I think that we need to make sure that we can alert on anomalous events on the instance that kind of fall outside the framework. So I think SOC 2, for instance, requires that you alert on different events like transfer and exfil of data, modification of events and controls. And so I think that we should be able to see all these exceptions that kind of lie outside the particular framework in a single view. I should be able to be alerted on it, create issues to investigate if necessary. And I think that the vision is for us to be able to solve both of those needs in GitLab, which is maintaining strong standards over code on a per environment basis, and also maintaining standards over the process that the users that are creating it in a single place And I agree with Sid that we should be doing this continuously, and practices like doing this on like every 1 in 5 commits, every 1 in 10 commits really incentivizes bad behavior, because I think that people are smart and they find ways around these limitations for the sake of convenience. And I think it's a challenge that we need to solve, to make compliance really, really easy to follow, and in a way that and implement in a way that instances don't have to sacrifice velocity, and go through lots of configuration in order to stay compliant. So that's kind of the vision and the approach that we're kind of taking. And I think part of this effort, we've actually spun up a new group at GitLab called the Compliance Group that's going to specialize in this vision kind of moving forward. But I just wanted to share that. Thanks a lot.